Boom! Welcome into Sports Betting Insight today. Pauly and Teddy. It is Thursday. Big game breakdown coming up, and we'll get to the deep dive with the AFC South. Only 3 divisions left, and of course, the play of the day. Some interesting numbers here. I wouldn't expect to see the same numbers when they're released in Las Vegas, but BetOnline came out with some win totals in the association, Teddy. The first thing that jumps out at me is the Lakers have a higher total than the Clippers. Calm down, everybody.
Well, I mean, again, let's not forget what the purpose of the betting markets are. You know, the goal of any sports book is to split action. So if they know they're going to get Lakers over money, yeah, they're going to bump that number up a little bit, a notch or two, to attempt to draw some under money so their books are balanced. So I'm not surprised the Lakers are higher than the Clippers, even though the Clippers have a bunch of all-stars in their front court. Lakers, not so much. The one that stood out to me, what are the Raptors doing at 47.5? I know they had a good year last year. I'm not looking at Toronto as being a team that's going to be up at the top of the Eastern Conference year in, year out. That number looked a little bit high to me as well. And look at the respect for the 76ers lined as a 500 team next year. Look at the respect for the Minnesota Timberwolves. What are they lined as the 5th highest team in the NBA? That stood out to me as well, although there is no number for the Boston Celtics just yet.
Yeah, Minnesota 46.5. They would have to improve by 16 wins to go over. And I love what they did in the offseason. That's a big jump, and certainly they blew a lot of games. Orlando at 40.5 is high, too.
What about the Knicks at 34.5? I mean, that's not one that I'm looking to bet over. But how about the Bulls at 29.5? A team that's expected to take a major step down. And no love for Phoenix or Brooklyn. 2 squads that were near the bottom last year and expected to be right back at the bottom again in 2017, 2018. These are virgin numbers from betonline.ag. And as you mentioned, Pauly, there will be differences from these numbers versus the broader market numbers. You can take advantage right now if you see a couple of these that stand out to you.
Yep, good job with Golden State at 67.5. I know Tony Miller, they were at the Golden Nugget, they were kicking around 69, and they settled at 66.5 as well for some win totals there. I can tell you what, if I ever slip one past the goalie with the fiance, I'm not going to call the radio crew and say, I'll see you in 2 weeks. What the hell's going on in MLB here?
Yeah, exactly. How can you tell that it's been almost exactly 9 months since the last MLB ended? These are all from yesterday. Every one of these is from yesterday. What do we got? Elvis Andrus on the paternity list. Chris Tillman on the paternity list. Carlos Santana on the paternity list. And yes, Josh Flegley on the paternity list. I'm sure there are more out there. We'll see what comes up on the in terms of roster moves today. But that's 9 months, almost to the day, from the end of last MLB season. And all these guys about to become dads.
All right. Yeah, guys, there's some key players here that are out for 10 days. Unbelievable. Are you got your ganja ready? What are you doing in here in Vegas?
Yeah, we got to talk about it. I mean, it's been all week. Article from the Las Vegas Sun today talking about how the first 4 days of legal recreational marijuana sales, $3 million in tax revenue, dude. $3 million in 4 days. Quote, we had a higher demand than everybody initially thought. Dispensary Association Director Rihanna Durrett said, it showed this market really exists. What do you think, Paul? You been willing to wait 3 hours in line to get some legal weed? Or you just go to your usual guy?
No, I never got into that. I tried it in college. The last thing I needed was another excuse to eat. I was a fat body. So, I mean, that's not my scene. High on life, baby. You got a lot. How about the cookies? Look at the $25 cookies.
Yeah, it's business as usual already. You know, they got Wheel Wednesdays and Mix and Match Thursdays. And, of course, the $25 chocolate cookies with, 16.46 milligrams of THC.
All right, very good. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. A bad beat. Rays Cubs under 9.5. It fell 10. The starters did their job, only giving up 3 runs.
Oh, yeah, the Rays bullpen had a bad afternoon. They gave up 3 in the 6th, 2 more in the 7th, 2 more in the 8th to get the game over the total. Snell pitched well. That wasn't good enough to keep that game under. Tough beat if you had Tampa and Chicago under that 9.5.
It's almost every game. It's ridiculous. A bad bet. The 40-cent move on the Yankees. What are they doing? What are you guys doing? They've lost 16 of 22. Betances was terrible again. They've blown 16 saves, tied for second most in all of baseball.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it was that all of this, not all the money, but a significant portion of that money on the Yankees, they were bet up from -140 to all the way to -180, came, Josh Donaldson's out. He's a scratch for the Blue Jays. The market's, just auto bet. Yankees, Yankees, Yankees. Not even paying any attention to Donaldson. Look at his last 8 games. The guy couldn't be colder. 1 for 26, 10 strikeouts during that span. 73 at-bats since Josh Donaldson's last home run. Yeah, Justin Smoke's been smoking for Toronto. He hit his 23rd home run of the year, raised his average to 300. But Betances, look at the quote from Joe Girardi. He's telling it very clearly. What's he walked? 11 of his last 22 batters that he's faced. Girardi, he's off mechanically, and we have to get him back on track. I don't know if that's going to happen between now and the All-Star break. And the Yankees, 6-16 their last 22 ball games, and the blown saves continue to be a problem.
All right, I don't understand this one either. I actually like Block. I think he's pretty good. But a 45-cent move on the Tigers, they lose.
Yeah, baffling. This is a serious question when you talk about what are the wise guys thinking and how can the average bettor take advantage of the wise guy mentality. Wise guys are steaming Detroit, going crazy, up to -$2. How can there be that kind of steam on a team that's now 37-46 with Daniel Norris, who's now 4-7 with a 5.29? It's where wise guys maybe aren't being that wise, and where savvy public bettors can take advantage. The Giants, all of a sudden, the hot team. That was a bad bet on Detroit yesterday, and the wise guys were all over it.
All right, here's another one. A 20-cent move on the Indians. I can't believe this. They lose 6-2. That's not surprising. Bauer 7-7 on the season. ESPN Stats and Info tweet. They fall to 2-11 in interleague games this year. The worst interleague record for a full season is 2-13 by the 2010 Pirates and the 2012 Rockies. What is their deal?
Well, the number that stands out to me, Cleveland's been favored -$2 or higher 12 times this year. They're 6-6 in those ball games. That stands out to me. When you have a team that's not consistently big chalk, but big chalk often enough, and they're not winning in that role, that is where you can make a whole lot of money riding some underdogs, like any Padres bettors have been able to do in this series. You made bank already, and it's not over yet. That's 3 straight wins, by the way, for Luis Perdomo. He's number 3 in ground ball rate behind Dallas Keuchel and Alex Wood. And he may be a guy worth watching very closely after the All-Star break, because you're going to catch him at some nice underdog prices with that San Diego team.
And I don't know how you're going against Houston, especially on the road. They won again. They're 31-9 on the road. Look at this again. ESPN Stats and Info. 3 teams since 1900 have won 31 of their first 40 road games. The Astros, the 0-1 Mariners, and the 1906 Cubs. The previous 2 won 116 games.
Yes, but if you remember, that Mariners team in 2001, which was as elite as it gets, they didn't even reach the World Series, let alone winning it. They lost in the playoffs to the New York Yankees.
Well, Yankees were better.
The Mariners won 116 games and 31 of their first 40 on the road. The Yankees were...
The Mariners should have lost in the first round that year. Cleveland had them in trouble. They were facing elimination in that.
They certainly were the better... The Mariners were the better regular season team. They were not the better postseason team.
Bad for the books. Marlins, 20-cent move. They went from +145 to +125. Leake's been terrible. Just awful lately.
Well, he's usually a ground ball guy for the Cards. That's his M.O. Well, he was leaving the ball up last night. 3 early home runs, but the Marlins up 7-0 in the third. That was all garbage time the rest of the way. And the books, they didn't take a beating on that one, but it certainly wasn't one of the better results for the house, with Miami taking all the money and getting an easy win.
All right, up next, big game breakdown. Here we go. Can the Red Sox get back on track? And Sale's on the mound again. And we'll get to the Houston Texans with the AFC South in the deep dive on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Go to SBROdds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on SportsBit, Betting Insight today. Time for big game breakdown. Sponsored and powered by BetOnline. Red Sox and the Rays. Sale against Faria. Red Sox $1.60 on the road. 7.5 the total. Key series. See if the Rays can make a move here, Teddy. Nobody's talking about them. They've had a great season.
Yeah, well, I don't know why I'm going to call it a great season, but they're very much in contention. But the Red Sox have a 5.5 game lead over third place Tampa right now in the AL East. 4 games over the Yankees. So does Tampa close the gap, or does Boston open some breathing room in the last few days before the All-Star break? And, of course, they've got their ace on the hill, the guy that the Red Sox would want anytime they're in the big game, in Chris Sale, who's doing a very different thing this year, Pauly, than he did last year. Last year, pitching to contact and trying to get outs with fewer pitches. This season, he's not worried about that so much. He's been dealing with his fastball. And, boy, when you look at the graphic, the strike percentage, the strikeout percentage, the swinging strike percentage, when you're number 2 to Max Scherzer in both of those statistical categories, heck, that means you're doing something right.
And he's 11-3, and the Red Sox are 13-4 in his starts. But how easily could it be They could be 17-0. Sale in 6 games, he did not get the win. 45 2/3, 7 earned runs, which is a 1.38 ERA, 31 hits, 4 walks, and 60 strikeouts. That's unbelievable, Teddy.
It's certainly a pitcher at the top of his game. And again, you're talking about, he's 11-3. When you look at the 60-4 strikeout to walk ratio in the games he didn't win, no question, Chris Sale has pitched well enough to go 17-0 this season. Tampa doesn't have a whole lot of pitchers like that, but boy, and this is my question. I'm still wondering that, whether Tampa is legit or whether they're overachievers. Of course, it was a direct question for Logan Morrison talking about Gary Sanchez being in the home run derby. That's a funny one. Quote, I remember when I had 14 home runs. Yeah, that was a month and a half ago. Oops.
Oh, I'm with him on that. Yeah, I'm with him on that. That's right. It's ridiculous. I know Sanchez was hurt, but already at a career-high 24 home runs. The power surge way off the charts. The slugging percentage, career .432, .414 last year. He's a .579 this year. Never a season above .468 prior to this season. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Who's on the team, who the manager is. It always seems they're around 500, at least competing for a playoff spot, Teddy.
Yeah, and certainly, Tampa has been able to do that this year despite a number of key injuries and a pitching staff that's been forced to rely on guys like Jacob Faria. I talk about a guy, he was the 330th overall pick in the 2011 draft. So he wasn't a top prospect. He didn't move up quickly through the minors, but was rock solid at AAA to open the season. 6-1 with a 3.07 ERA. And I'll tell you what, his first 5 big league starts, every one of them has been good. 3-0 with a 2.23 ERA. And you look at the numbers, the advanced metric numbers, there are no flukes there. The fielding and independent pitching, 2.84. The strikeout per 9 innings ratio, 9.7. Only 1.4 walk per 9 innings. And, of course, the swing strike percentage at 12.3. He's getting guys to swing and miss at his off-speed stuff and his stuff off the plate. We're talking about a young hurler who's not highly regarded in the markets, but he's had more strikeouts than hits allowed in all 5 of his big league starts this season.
And this is a big series because this is where the Red Sox could run away and hide with a good performance. They swept the Blue Jays. They took it to Texas until they ran into Cashner and couldn't get the bats going. And Fister had nothing. The Yankees look like a fraud. Bullpen's in shambles. They've lost 16-22, as we mentioned earlier. So with a 4.5 game lead over the Yankees, and they could have bigger separation between Tampa here, it's a huge series as well, and they started off the right way with Sale. I mean, listen, they're doing this, Teddy, with first place with a comfortable lead, and Porcello struggled too, and he's 4-10.
Sure. What do the Red Sox have that has been so successful this season? One, they're getting production from up and down that lineup, 1 through 9. We talked about how Mookie Betts had 8 RBIs the other day, tying an MLB record. You can only do that if you're getting the production from the bottom of the batting order to have the base runners for your leadoff guy to knock in. And that's been consistent for Boston all season. And, boy, the back end of that bullpen's been real good. Kimbrel's had a couple of hiccups. I think he's had 2 hiccups all year. But the bottom line is the games they're supposed to win, they've been able to close out and win on a consistent basis, as opposed to a Yankees team that, as you mentioned earlier in the show, has 16 blown saves this year, second highest in all of baseball.
No, good point by you. You can go to Kelly in the 8th, who throws 102 at times, and you can turn it over to Kimbrel as well. Make it a 7-inning game. You're going to win the division. Up next, deep dive. AFC South today. I like this team a lot. Still worried about the quarterback position, though. The Houston Texans up next. And the play of the day on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Back on SportsBit, betting insight today, Pauly and Teddy. Follow us on Twitter at Pauly Howard, at Teddy_covers. Houston Texans in a second, Teddy. Costa Rica, here you come.
Oh, yeah, you can join me. Join Clay Travis from Fox Sports. Him and his, what has he got, 400,000 Twitter followers? I got to 25,000. I think I'm somebody. This guy's got 400 grand. Gil Alexander from the VSiN Network is going to be there. Matthew Holt from CG Technology is going to be there. A whole host of other big names in the sports betting world. It is the inaugural, the first International Football Betting Conference. Friday and Saturday, August 4th and 5th in San Jose, Costa Rica. Visit www.ifbc.live to sign up for your free invite today. Again, www.ifbc for International Football Betting Conference, ifbc.live. Come on, let's hang out in August.
All right, you got it. Here we go. Houston Texans. We start with the AFC South. Only 3 divisions left. Their win total's 8.5. Last year, what a strange season. 9-7 straight up. They won their division with atrocious quarterback play. 6-9-1 ATS, 6-9-1 to the under, 7-1 straight up at home, including the playoff win against the Raiders, 2-6 on the road. Mainstream stats, 17 takeaways, 24 giveaways, -7 turnover margin as well, and the offensive numbers are ugly. 4.7 yards per play, second to last, only ahead of the Rams. 4.1 yards per rush, 5.9 yards per pass attempt, dead last. 32 sacks allowed, slightly fewer than average. Remember, this team, this was a 4-point game late in New England in the second round of the playoffs. Fuller dropped a wide-open touchdown. Osweiler threw 3 picks. They had a ton of turnovers. They have a dynamite defense. They did all of this without J.J. Watt, too. And you can blame Osweiler, certainly, but how about the scheme with the dink and dunk? O'Brien's calling the plays. The OC's out. You can't get any worse than Osweiler at quarterback, and they still won a playoff game and had New England on the ropes. That's how good that defense is.
Yes, but they were money losers last year. Again, they covered 6-point spreads throughout the 16-game regular season. Worth noting they were 8-1 straight up at home, counting the playoff win over the Raiders with Connor Cook at quarterback. And at least some of the success they had last year was schedule-related. They did not face one of the tougher slates. But, you know, the amazing thing when let's flash those offensive stats one more time real quick right here. When you're number 31 in the NFL in yards per play, and you're below average in yards per rush, and below average in yards per pass attempt, and the offense doesn't work, and your defense only creates 17 takeaways for the whole season. That's bottom quartile in the NFL. And you finish with a -7 turnover margin. These aren't teams, and you finish with a 2-6 road record. These aren't the teams you expect to see making the playoffs or winning the division, not in the modern NFL, which speaks volumes about how freaking good that defense actually was last year, Pauly. And it could be even better this season.
Yep, 5.1 yards per play allowed, 79.3 opponents' quarterback rating allowed, third in the NFL, 31 sacks and 3.9 yards per rush allowed, top 10. It's a nasty defense. A big loss, though. They lose A.J. Boye, who stays in the division and goes to Jacksonville. But remember, a lot of those games, they won a game in Jacksonville where Osweiler threw for 90 yards.
Which, again, you don't want to be winning games where your quarterback throws for 90 yards. And no matter what happens this season, Osweiler will not throw a pass for the Houston Texans. Whether it's Tom Savage, whether it's Deshaun Watson, or whether it's somebody else, it's not going to be Brock Osweiler. His tenure ran out very quickly with the Texans after what was, you can only describe it as a disastrous season.
What do you think? Should they have called Cutler? They made a run at Romo. I thought that was going to happen. I guess the plan is to go with Savage. If he doesn't turn it over, I guess it'll be okay, but Watson won't be ready. What do you think of this move? That they could be close to winning a couple playoff games, and they're going with Savage.
Well, I mean, when you have the other pieces in place, you can go with a quarterback who may not be elite, as long as that quarterback doesn't lose you games. And when you think about, I don't know, some guy named Dak Prescott for the Cowboys last year as a prime example, Dallas didn't ask Prescott to do too much. They relied on their running game. Their defense was adequate, and Prescott made plays when he had to, even in crunch time. And he didn't lose them games. I mean, I would have to think that Tom Savage will be the starter on opening day. Tom Savage has been the starter. He was a starter in mini camps, and Deshaun Watson, for all the success he had at Clemson, you know, back-to-back appearances in the national title game, we are talking about a rookie QB playing behind a veteran. But I wouldn't be shocked at all. And, you know, we've seen plenty of this from Bill O'Brien, where playing the QB shuffle. If Savage struggles, we know Watson's a winner. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him in play October, November, maybe earlier than you think. But, you know, look at the draft, because, of course, we got Watson as their number 1 overall pick. I love Zach Cunningham, the second pick. He was the SEC's leading tackler last year for Vanderbilt. He's got the potential to be an impact player and finally replace Brian Cushing, who hasn't been able to stay healthy in any recent season.
They've been bad on special teams for a long time. How about this? Ranking 28th or worse in special teams DVOA during each of the past 5 seasons, including dead last in 12, 15, and 16. Special teams tend to vary more than offense and defense from year to year, which, this is unbelievable, Teddy, how bad they've been.
Yeah, well, their kicking game has been bad. And again, DVOA isn't the be-all for special teams. You know, a lot of focus on whether your kicker's kicking touchbacks, which didn't happen last year. A lot of emphasis on net punting average and not your actual punter himself, which wasn't very good last year. But when you have a consistent problem, when you're dead last in back-to-back seasons, and oh, by the way, they're basically bringing everybody back on special teams, all of their key players, kicker, punter, long snapper, etc. They're all going to be back. It's certainly something of a concern and not something that's really registered very well. When we talk about a point spread being affected by special teams, doesn't happen. When you're talking about power ratings being affected by bad special teams, doesn't happen. So when you find a squad that has bad special teams and you can predict it and expect it, sometimes you get a little bit of extra value betting against those type of teams. Again, the Texans they won the division last year, and they were money losers while doing it.
What do you have on the schedule?
Well, I mean, last year, I should say, was slightly tougher than the NFL average. And boy, you know, they were really good in all the close games. 8-2 in games decided by 7 points or less. And, of course, they won that wild card playoff game against Connor Cook. The 2017 strength of schedule is almost exactly the same. It is slightly tougher than the NFL average. It is the toughest schedule in the division based on this year's season win total numbers. That's because of their 2 extra games. The AFC South faces the NFC West and the AFC North. The 2 extra games for Houston, they've got Kansas City and at New England, a rematch of last year's playoff loss.
All right, I like this team a lot. I can only look over. It doesn't matter who the quarterback's been. They continue to win games and win the division, whether it's Schaub, Hoyer, Whedon. Yates got in there and won a playoff game as well. Osweiler, they still win the division. Savage can't be any worse. Just don't turn it over. I think they can go 9-7 or 10-6 again.
Yeah, Savage can't be any worse. Famous last words. But one thing I saw, you know, when Tom Savage played at Rutgers, the guy does have an NFL arm. He can throw the ball downfield, and he's willing to take shots, which is something that Brock Osweiler was not willing to do last year. There's hope for this squad, even with question marks at the quarterback position. And there are so many teams that have question marks at QB that really don't have that kind of hope. Houston does.
All right, money time, play of the day. Calling it audible here. Teddy doesn't like it. Hold your nose. I will own it. Red Sox, betting number 963. $1.60 on the road. Sales been lights out. A red-hot Boston team is going to be in a foul mood after getting shut down by Cashner. Fister's not going tonight. Don't worry about it. We'll lay it with the Red Sox. And sales been unbelievable to get the job done on the road coming up tonight. We continue with the AFC South on Friday. We'll close out strong. And then it's off with the slowest week in all of sports, with nothing going on with the All-Star break. We'll talk to you Friday on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.